So kind of what I want to start off this talk with is I'm gonna start off like with you kind of like going over like your career, kind of like all the spots that you have hit so far, kind of the different schools, the different colleges and the areas that you've been at.
Sure. So I started off my career in Muncie, Indiana, where I worked at a physician's clinic, Central Indiana Orthopedics, and then they would also kick me out to a high school for outreach. And that high school was actually at Blackford High School in Blackford County, Indiana, one of the smallest counties in all of Indiana. And let's just say they weren't exactly the most comfortable clinic. They had some challenges there, or comfortable county. They had some challenges in the county. So it was an interesting time there, but I spent 4 years of my career there before switching schools, still in Muncie, for a year before I came back home to Chicago, where I worked at Elmhurst College, which is a D3 university in Elmhurst. And then I worked at Nazareth High School for a year, all under the umbrella of Athletico. Nazareth is a pretty comfortable school out in the suburbs in LaGrange. And then I transitioned to Eisenhower High School in Blue Island, that's where you met me. And I still under the umbrella of Athletico for a while. Now I'm actually hired through the district, so I'm not working for Athletico anymore. And Blue Island has some challenges that it presents me on a day-to-day basis. So that's kind of a pretty quick synopsis of my career. I've kind of had a wide range of locations and challenges.
Okay. So where I want to start off now, kind of like going back to when you were at the high schools in a physician extended position at the clinic. Kind of what challenges did you face there? Kind of dealing with like the students and even like the community.
Yeah, I think there are a couple of challenges. So I guess my time in Indiana and my time in Blue Island here at Eisenhower can be relatively similar. And it's a pretty stark contrast to what it was at, let's say, Nazareth, who's a pretty affluent community. Those challenges have to do twofold. One, insurance-based issues. Obviously, some of these insurances are not the best that I'm working with. And that presents problems in getting them seen by doctors, getting surgeries scheduled, and any physical therapy concerns that I have. That I've had a lot of it coming back home here in the Eisenhower community. In Indiana, it was actually kind of nice because our docs would help with some of that. It's a community school, and it was kind of like, it's supposed to be community outreach, but they really took it seriously. They helped out the community, and they found ways, since we had a connection with the school, the physicians would help out. Here, it's a lot tougher to do. I've gotten rejected by doctor after doctor after doctor after doctor for treatments and for surgeries for our athletes here, because they just don't have the insurance. They have Medicaid or HMOs or fringe insurances that, quite frankly, I had to actually look up myself because I have never heard of them before. And that's been a challenge. Also, physical therapy. I worked for Athletico for a long time. Athletico wouldn't see a lot of our kids because of insurance issues. So it had to be out-of-pocket costs. Well, out-of-pocket costs for physical therapy is not cheap. So most of our kids were a easy no-go on that. So I had to get creative. I do want to actually, something that probably goes completely forgotten about with these kind of issues, nutrition. Especially at Eisenhower now, my biggest issue is that these kids don't eat. And I'm not being hyperbolic about that. We'll get a cramping situation late in a game at like 5:30 on a Tuesday. And I'll go up and I'll ask the kid, my first question will be, oh, have you eaten anything today? And the answer will either be one of two options. It'll either be, no, I haven't eaten anything at all day. Or I had nachos at lunch. And I've had situations where they'd only eat a bag of like flaming hot Cheetos, or they'd only eat Sour Patch Kids or something like that before athletic events. And these events are taking place at 4:30 every day. And you're telling me you haven't eaten. That presents a whole bunch of challenges with fainting, with cramping, with if we have diabetic kids, if we have any kids with any kind of general medical issue. And it's a problem because we do provide free lunches here. The lunch quality is not great, or at least so I hear from all of the students. So they just don't eat anything at all. And we're trying to get that changed. We're trying to educate, but it's a real problem. Whereas opposed to Nazareth, if it was a semi-hot day, well, not semi-hot, if it got to like 90 degrees, parents would be bringing in trucks full, like pickup trucks full of Gatorade and oranges and all kinds of fruits and products, ice towels. They'd be coming out of nowhere with ice towels. And I'm like, we would have a hallway full of supplies for these kids to participate in 90 plus degree weather. It was astonishing. And it's just, some places can do that and some places can't. And you just kind of have to roll and get creative. I don't know if that answered anything.
It was right on topic. And
Okay.
kind of like a point, like from like speaking on like the nutritional sense, kind of like, since I've seen that area in Blue Island, really isn't any, I would say, grocery stores near that area. It's like a gas station down the street and then like a couple fast food restaurants right there by the area, but there's nowhere really to even get kind of food, even like to eat, like maybe before a game, like if you don't like what was at lunch, you can go maybe to the grocery store, go pick something up. And around that area, there's really nothing there to even do that.
And even if there was, like, the closest Subway is on Pulaski, maybe like a 5-minute drive away. And that's better, except Subway can be expensive. And there's a Mr. Sub right across the street from the high school that you can get like a full meal for like $5. That's the difference. And it's for everybody, not just high school athletes. To eat healthy is expensive. To eat good, healthy food is expensive. So it's kind of a flaw in the system, but that's kind of what it is.
All right. My next question for you would be kind of, what do you think has been one of your biggest learning moments so far in your career?
I feel like, that's a loaded question. There's a lot of places I can go with that. So when I first started, I loved going into the physician office setting as a physician extender to begin my career, because that taught me so much. Everything I saw at the high school, I could bring to the office every day and just ask a doc, like, hey, this is kind of weird. I'm not really sure what's going on here. What's your 2 cents? Or I would just see how a doctor goes through their evaluation process and what their treatment plans were. And that would teach me, that was my version of a master course or a PhD course, was just learning from all of them. And that was invaluable experience that I would never trade in. So that's the first thing. And then I think being with Athletico, it did teach me a lot about more of the athletic training side of things, as far as how documentation should be done and how kind of creating those relationships with doctors and physical therapists when they're not already ingrained. Like I got lucky in Muncie because those relationships were already inherent, because I was working at the doctor's office. When you're not working at a doctor's office, you got to actually go out and speak with docs and speak with receptionists and speak with all these people and create those relationships out of nowhere. And Athletico did a good job of helping me prepare for that. And then the one thing that I'm always striving to do is communicate and figure out better ways of communicating with a bunch of different people. My big challenge here has always been to educate parents on what athletic trainers can do and how we can benefit them and make their lives easier and less stressful. And that's been a process. Let me tell you, that is not an easy process. So that's kind of, I guess, one of the bigger things that I'm still learning, how best to get that message across. So I guess you're always learning something. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot that I have picked up. So, yeah.
Okay. And then my next question I have for you is kind of what keeps you working with this population? And like more speaking towards like the students at Eisenhower or even like the students at the high school in Indiana that you worked at.
Yeah, I fell in love with the population I was at in Muncie. And it was rough to actually leave that, but it was time for me to come home because I'm from Chicago originally, the Chicagoland area. But for example, what kept me here when the Athletico shift happened, I had become part of this community. I know all of the coaches, I know all the administration, I know all of the kids because I've been here for 5 years. So these seniors now were freshmen, when I started. So I've known all of them for 4 years. So that familiarity, that comfort with who I'm working with, I felt like this program has gotten better with each year and kind of adjusted with all of those challenges that we've mentioned each year. So I want to keep on that. I want to keep doing that. And I want to keep improving this community, whichever way I can. And that just happens to be through the sports medicine program here.
And then kind of building off that questions, what do you think are kind of like the next steps for you to like continue to improve on kind of like the quality of like even like the basically resources available there?
Yeah, it's the district now is going through quite the shift because all 3 of our athletic trainers that are in our district are now hired in-house in the district. So we've essentially been given the keys to address and change the sports medicine program here. And we're talking about some big changes that are coming through the summer into next year, I think is when we're going to hopefully enact a lot of this. More of a concussion baseline program, I think would be really, really good. We've also talked about, all 3 of us are still doing pen and paper check-ins with students coming in and filling out, like checking ice, heat, and whatever. We're going to go hopefully to an electronic system here soon, which I think will be quite an upgrade. And that will help with the communication because hopefully through that electronic system, we can then send emails to parents, to the students, to physical therapists, to doctors, to whoever we need to include in that conversation. I think that will help us tremendously. So those are some big changes that are coming. Some small changes, just tweaking how we communicate regularly with parents and trying to figure out the best way to get that information out there to them, which we're still communicating. We're still trying to figure out that best way between the 3 schools, but a lot of optimism going forward into the summer. It's great things are coming for our district. So it's exciting.
Okay. And then my final question for you. Now this is another possible loaded question. Okay. So I want to know kind of what do you think kind of needs to happen for there to be kind of like equitable healthcare kind of throughout kind of like the schools, throughout the districts, throughout like basically Illinois, or even just the world in US in general?
Yeah, that is a loaded question. And when I run for office someday, I'll try to address that. With it's tough because I've had some conversations about how can we still get athletes seen. Um, for example, if they need like a shoulder surgery or knee surgery, not that all doctors aren't great. They've gotten their medical degrees and they're amazing. But there are some doctors that I'd rather them see than others. They're just unavailable. They can't be seen. And I don't know that I have the answer, but I would like them to go to doctors that I trust and stuff. There are reasons for urgent cares, for example. And those are great facilities that help people at very low cost to that individual. And that's an amazing service that they provide. Do I trust everything that comes out of an urgent care? No. There's many a time that I've seen some treatment plans come out of there that I'm like, I don't know if I agree with this. And I have to go with it. If we can find a way to stabilize that process and maybe have some orthopedic facilities open up more of a wide open walk-in clinic at a decent cost where you can get an x-ray and just an opinion, and then if you need further treatment or you need X, Y, and Z, like, okay, maybe we can figure that out. But maybe a more wide open walk-in clinic process at some of these facilities would help. And then for physical therapy, getting physical therapists out of the school, I think, is huge. And I know that doesn't benefit the companies that these physical therapists work for, but it does create a reputation for that company. I know Athletico did a good job when they could of sending some PTs out here and working with the kids, which I appreciate. And that does get their name out there. So that's people that can have the resources of going to that facility now know it exists, knows where it's at, and can go there. So I guess it's a combination of, you have to do a little bit better to create some opportunities like the walk-in clinics that I mentioned. And you also have to put yourself out there a little bit. And even though it's like a community service, to just go help out for free, it could help you out on the back end with some advertising and getting people to see your name at certain events. I don't know. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
I feel like that was a roundabout way, but then I got there eventually.
It was good. I like the reply. So that was kind of all of the questions that I had for you today. So I want to thank you for joining me for this chat.
Of course.
So I learned a lot of stuff from you, heard some good news about kind of like all of the updates that you guys have coming up there. Hope they all kind of like go well and go kind of like how you're planning on them to.
Yeah, you're always welcome to come back. You can always come and hang out. You're always welcome to.
The first question that I have for you for today is kind of like, what drew you to working with this patient population?
So what drew me is, I remember like in our first, I think in the summer, I'm assuming in the summer, Taylor mentioned on how like athletic trainers aren't everywhere. Because like I had an athletic trainer in my high school. I knew like the public high school by me also had one. So it didn't like, I'm from Indiana, by the way. So, but I didn't know that like athletic trainers weren't at every school. And so then like we started talking about how CPS and like I think New York public schools also don't have any or very little. So then I started like getting into it and I did my own research project on it and then made it a career goal. So.
And then kind of like, I would say kind of like I've had like an experience like kind of with that. I went to a school in Harvey, Illinois, a high school there, and we had an athletic trainer on staff, but he really wasn't there that often. So kind of like all of our care basically kind of came from ourselves or coaches majority of the time.
Right.
So kind of that's kind of what drew me to even like wanting to even talk about this kind of topic is because of like I physically like experience kind of like this
Right.
stuff going on. And it's like even like of course you like expect possibly that I kind of like want to go into this area also too.
Okay.
Kind of due to the experience that I've had also with it.
Yeah.
Next thing I want to kind of like talk to you about is kind of like have you experienced any kind of like challenges so far kind of like working with this population?
There are some challenges. So it's hard with our model that we have. So I'm with ACI and they have the contract with CPS. And CPS wants like the full city coverage and then be able to have a full city coverage, but also have people like at the schools. But there's not enough athletic trainers who are interested in this model. So there's like 4 or 5 of us to cover like the regional model. So like covering the games at the stadiums, and then like if we can go to schools, then we go there.
Okay.
The struggles that I'm seeing with it is, for me personally, is the athletes don't know that I'm there, and they don't know that they can trust me. After like football season, like I gained the trust from majority of the schools, but then there's also some schools where they're stuck in the old mindset of coaching of like they're fine, they just got their bell rung, or they're fine, they just roll their ankle even though his ankle's not in place anymore. Like just like
Yeah.
so I think dealing with coaches and athletes who see that and them not wanting to talk to me because they don't want to get yelled at by their coach or be looked as not manly enough because they're injured.
Yeah.
And on top of all of it is insurance and everything, which is just it's whole other issue. So.
All right, and then kind of like a second part to that question is kind of were there any challenges that you haven't faced yet that you were like expecting to face?
I was expecting pushback from parents. I was nervous because of the fact that, like, one, I'm some random person who's popping me up at your games and telling you like I'm a healthcare worker. 2, I'm white. And I felt like, I'm in a different population. Not that many people trust healthcare workers in itself, and let alone with everything that's going on in our society today, they might not trust me. So, but I haven't really gotten any pushback from parents. The only type of pushback I got was why I didn't send one kid who had a concussion on an ambulance, but I sent another kid on an ambulance. But I explained to them, like, this kid had neck pain and he was dropped on his head. Well, this kid, he got collided, like 2 helmets. He has no neck pain and he has 2 symptoms. So that's why I gave him whole concussion education, like while I was still working on the sidelines, and told him like, we can send him on an ambulance if you would feel more comfortable, but so yeah.
Have you kind of like like kind of like what has been your experience with kind of like trying to like refer like the athletes that you see to like primaries or even like to try to get into like orthos and stuff like that?
So it's been a hit or miss, in all honesty. So for the athletes that desperately need it, so like broken bone or concussion or anything like that, we have doctors, I don't want to say in our pocket, but like we have doctors who we have a list of that we can recommend to. And I try to find ones because I'm the only one on the south side. And there's not that many doctors or in general like good hospitals around here besides like University of Chicago that I know of. So trying to find doctors who I can send them to. And along with that is like finding time for parents to be able to get their kid there, be able to afford the care, and or finding a doctor who accepts their insurance. So,
You kind of like addressed this one already, but the next one I wanted to like ask you about, kind of asking about kind of like the impact the community has had on your ability to provide care. You kind of like addressed it with like kind of talking about like the impact parents have had so far, but has there been any like other kind of like members of the community that may have kind of, I would say, influenced your ability to provide care to your athletes?
yeah, so the schools that I'm currently at, they really appreciate my care and they're trying to get, I do have a relationship with the athletes, but it's not as strong as it would be if I was at one school. So right now I'm at two schools and I work at the stadium. So I'm not there every single day after school doing rehab, like, right at like the normal high school athletic trainer would have. But I have two schools that basically want me there full time. And they're talking to the athletic department, like the AD, like the head ADs or whatever, or CPS, being like, hey, we need Taylor here full time. And I have both of them doing that. So having their support and they trust me and I basically can get whatever I want. So like I ordered to Medico about $14,000 just to start them off from scratch. And I was able to get all of it. So being able to show them like, hey, I know what I'm doing. Hey, I want to be here full time. Like, so yeah.
Kind of piggybacking off that kind of did the schools that kind of you're currently at right now, do they already have like kind of like EAPs in place, or did you have to like kind of create some for them?
So one school, I asked them for their EAP. He said he doesn't know where it's at. I'm like, okay, we need to find it like ASAP. And this is when I first started, but then I really started like telling him like, hey, we need to find this EAP, after the DeMar Hamlin situation. And then the other school that I am at, and I am slowly, the other school I'm at, they showed me it. And it's not great. It is not acceptable in my standards. It is written and then like faxed or like photocopied. So it's like that black, like it looks ugly, first of all. Then it's only for the gym, one gym. They have 3 gyms and fields outside. So it's only for the main gym. And it's not even like a picture of the gym. Someone drew it, like hand drawn it. And I was just like, okay. And then there's no policies and procedures, and there's lightning safety, but there's no heat, cold, like any type of shooting. Like the AD has one for like school shooter. We're in Chicago. And 2 weeks ago, there's a shooting down the block while kids were outside practicing. And everyone was standing on the field. And I'm like, we should get off. And the coaches were like, yeah, we need to get off the field at least. So there's no policy or procedure in place for things like that. So I am working on making those, and I'm gonna make them for both schools. So yeah, there's not great. So.
Okay. My next question for you would be, have you had any learning moments yet? Kind of there.
Had a lot. Learning moments, like athletic training, like how to deal with an injury, learning moments, or learning moments on dealing with like Chicago public schools, or both.
We can do both. Yeah.
So athletic training moments, that like I've learned more from is ankle dislocations, because I had 4 in my first year, which was so much fun. They did not react on how I thought they would, because they were talking to me, laughing. They didn't even realize that their ankle was dislocated or broke. So I think realizing, so in my mind, I've never like seen a broken bone or anything before football season, besides like a clavicle, but you know, so in my mind, like when someone breaks their bone or something dislocates, they're gonna know right away, and they're gonna be in pain. They're gonna be crying, like, the whole 9 yards. And that was not the case at all. One of them limped off the field and said that he only sprained his ankle. And I was like, no, he didn't. And then the other kid was on the field. He knew his ankle was hurting. Like he was rolling around and everything like that. But after like, he was like, once I got out there, he was calm. But he should have been in a lot more pain because it was like an L.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Yeah. So, and then also dealing with educating coaches and like family on how to deal with a concussion, because everyone's like, oh, you can't go to sleep tonight still. And I'm like, no. Like, that's not the case. So trying to figure out how to educate them without one, like, I'm trying to think of the word. I know, like, I don't want to feel like, have them feel like I'm smarter than you.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, just telling them, like, hey, best practices, to do this, and this for a concussion or for whatever.
Okay.
So, and I guess that goes with dealing with the community and CPS and everything else. It's just trying to make sure that the athletes understand and using their lingo. Like I told the kid, like, oh, your ankle's dislocated. He's like, so it's broke? I was like, I don't have x-ray vision. Okay. I use that a lot. But like I've started to like use my hands as like demonstration. So I was like, this is your ankle. Okay. It's supposed to be like this. It's like this. He's like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, so you can't walk on it. And he's like, really? I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. Like, so.
Okay. All right. Kind of like the next area that I want to talk on would be kind of like, what changes would you like to see or improvements would you like to see kind of like regarding your ability to provide cares in like the schools that you work in? Maybe a little loaded.
Yeah, no, you're good. So the schools that I work with and the stadium, like the stadium okay. So when we first started in the fall, we had no supplies. No supplies. The first football game, we went to Lane Tech and they had extra, because there's an athletic trainer there. And he had extra like supplies and stuff. So we took whatever we could from him. And then I didn't have any SAM splints or ACE wraps or anything from CPS, and ATI was like waiting, and they waited too long in order to buy supplies themselves and then just bill CPS later. I didn't think of that idea until last minute. So I think ensuring that we have supplies necessary, because first football game, I had a kid dislocate his wrist, and the visiting team had an athletic trainer, and she got to him before me because it was like I was on this side of the field. The injury happened all the way on the other side of the field. So like right once I noticed, I started going over there, but she was literally 10 feet from him. And so we're holding his wrist, and she's like, do you have any splints or anything like that? I was like, I have nothing. I have 2 ace wraps that we can use, but that's it. So I think getting supplies in an orderly fashion and also ensuring that nothing is expired. Because I think when our managers went around to the stadium to see how they're doing, either there was no AEDs on site or they were expired by years. And that's not great. So I think supplies is the main thing. Because like I don't even have a table at all. So it's great.
All right. And then kind of another loaded question for you. Going. Kind of what do you think needs to happen for there to be kind of like equitable services provided like to the athletes? Kind of like compared to like other schools in like more like affluent areas, I would say.
So I think I think CPS is now realizing that they need to do something about it. Like on how there's no healthcare like at these schools. But I don't want to put this out there or anything. Like I don't want no bad juju or none of that. But if something were to happen at the schools, like a DeMar Hamlin situation, and there is nobody there to help, because coaches, they're CPR trained, but it's a 5-minute video to watch. There's no practice dummies or anything. Like I've asked almost every coach, I'm like, do you know how to do CPR? And they're like, no. Like, okay, great. So I think CPS will take it more serious on how we need to be at the schools. So like, and then be able to go to the stadiums or something like that from there. And then I think we need more athletic trainers who want to work in these settings. But the issue is nobody wants to work in the regional model that they have right now. So like my manager's been telling me like people are applying, but nobody likes a regional model. Nobody wants to work at a stadium and see over 100 schools. And, there's no follow-up. There's follow-up, but there's no like in-person follow-up or anything. So that's the issue that I'm seeing as well. So.
And then kind of like one of our final questions that I want to ask you about is kind of like, how do you think this experience is going to like affect your future career?
Future. So this is my future career. Like this was my like 5-year, 10-year goal. Is to be working like in Chicago, like public schools and like helping them out. So I don't know what my future goals are. I think being at a school permanently, but that's mostly up to CPS at this point. Like I don't have no control or say so. So, but let's just say if I were to move to another school, I can tell the athletic director, whoever I interview with, like, hey, I've helped over, I think the amount of documentation that I've done was over 180 cases. And that was just football season. So that's not even including winter or spring yet. So telling them like, I've also dealt with being the only athletic trainer for 4 varsity football games in a row. It's like Saturday from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Saturday. I was the only medical staff there. So I think being able to tell them, like, I got this, basically. So, yeah, I think that it gives you a lot of experience, especially being fresh out of school.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was the last question I have for you today. I want to thank you for joining me for this today. I feel like we had a very informational talk. Like this will go very well with kind of like what I'm trying to convey for my project and what I'm trying to put out there. So I want to thank you for joining me and helping me with this.
No problem.